the new god of prophet, the new gods of prophet, the new god of prophet, the new goddess of prophet, the new goddesses of prophet, the new goddess of prophet, the old god of prophet, the old gods of prophet, the old god of prophet, the old goddess of prophet, the old goddesses of prophet, the old goddess of prophet, the greater god of prophet, the greater gods of prophet, the greater god of prophet, the greater goddess of prophet, the greater goddesses of prophet, the greater goddess of prophet, the lesser god of prophet, the lesser gods of prophet, the lesser god of prophet, the lesser goddess of prophet, the lesser goddesses of prophet, the lesser goddess of prophet, the higher god of prophet, the higher gods of prophet, the higher god of prophet, the higher goddess of prophet, the higher goddesses of prophet, the higher goddess of prophet, the lower god of prophet, the lower gods of prophet, the lower god of prophet, the lower goddess of prophet, the lower goddesses of prophet, the lower goddess of prophet, the greater spirit of prophet, the greater spirits of prophet, the greater spirit of prophet, the lesser spirit of prophet, the lesser spirits of prophet, the lesser spirit of prophet, the higher spirit of prophet, the higher spirits of prophet, the higher spirit of prophet, the lower spirit of prophet, the lower spirits of prophet, the lower spirit of prophet, the major god of prophet, the major gods of prophet, the major god of prophet, the major goddess of prophet, the major goddesses of prophet, the major goddess of prophet, the minor god of prophet, the minor gods of prophet, the minor god of prophet, the minor goddess of prophet, the minor goddesses of prophet, the minor goddess of prophet, the superior god of prophet, the superior gods of prophet, the superior god of prophet, the superior goddess of prophet, the superior goddesses of prophet, the superior goddess of prophet, the inferior god of prophet, the inferior gods of prophet, the inferior god of prophet, the inferior goddess of prophet, the inferior goddesses of prophet, the inferior goddess of prophet, the ancestor god of prophet, the ancestor gods of prophet, the ancestor god of prophet, the ancestor goddess of prophet, the ancestor goddesses of prophet, the ancestor goddess of prophet, the ascendant god of prophet, the ascendant gods of prophet, the ascendant god of prophet, the ascendant goddess of prophet, the ascendant goddesses of prophet, the ascendant goddess of prophet, the descendant god of prophet, the descendant gods of prophet, the descendant god of prophet, the descendant goddess of prophet, the descendant goddesses of prophet, the descendant goddess of prophet, the transcendent god of prophet, the transcendent gods of prophet, the transcendent god of prophet, the transcendent goddess of prophet, the transcendent goddesses of prophet, the transcendent goddess of prophet, the past god of prophet, the past gods of prophet, the past god of prophet, the past goddess of prophet, the past goddesses of prophet, the past goddess of prophet, the present god of prophet, the present gods of prophet, the present god of prophet, the present goddess of prophet, the present goddesses of prophet, the present goddess of prophet, the future god of prophet, the future gods of prophet, the future god of prophet, the future goddess of prophet, the future goddesses of prophet, the future goddess of prophet, the authentic god of prophet, the authentic gods of prophet, the authentic god of prophet, the authentic goddess of prophet, the authentic goddesses of prophet, the authentic goddess of prophet, the synthetic god of prophet, the synthetic gods of prophet, the synthetic god of prophet, the synthetic goddess of prophet, the synthetic goddesses of prophet, the synthetic goddess of prophet, the progressive god of prophet, the progressive gods of prophet, the progressive god of prophet, the progressive goddess of prophet, the progressive goddesses of prophet, the progressive goddess of prophet, the regressive god of prophet, the regressive gods of prophet, the regressive god of profit, the regressive goddess of profit, the regressive goddesses of profit, the regressive goddess of profit, the ordinary god of profit, the ordinary gods of profit, the ordinary god of profit, the ordinary goddess of profit, the ordinary goddesses of profit, the ordinary goddess of profit, the extraordinary god of profit, the extraordinary gods of profit, the extraordinary god of profit, the extraordinary goddess of profit, the extraordinary goddesses of profit, the extraordinary goddess of profit, the static god of profit, the static gods of profit, the static god of profit, the static goddess of profit, the static goddesses of profit, the static goddess of profit, the dynamic god of profit, the dynamic gods of profit, the dynamic god of profit, the dynamic goddess of profit, the dynamic goddesses of profit, the dynamic goddess of profit, the land god of profit, the land gods of profit, the land god of profit, the land goddess of profit, the land goddesses of profit, the land goddess of profit, the sea god of profit, the sea gods of profit, the sea god of profit, the sea goddess of profit, the sea goddesses of profit, the sea goddess of profit, the sky god of profit, the sky gods of profit, the sky god of profit, the sky goddess of profit, the sky goddesses of profit, the sky goddess of profit, the god of profit, the gods of profit, the god of profit, the goddess of profit, the goddesses of profit, the goddess of profit, the half god of profit, the half gods of profit, the half god of profit, the half goddess of profit, the half goddesses of profit, the half goddess of profit, the vessel of profit, the vessels of profit, the vessel of profit, the name of profit, the names of profit, the name of profit, the person of profit, the persons of profit, the person of profit, the persona of profit, the personas of profit, the persona of profit, the personage of profit, the personages of profit, the personage of profit, the personality of profit, the personalities of profit, the personality of profit, the personification of profit, the personifications of profit, the personification of profit, the image of profit, the images of profit, the image of profit, the imagination of profit, the imaginations of profit, the imagination of profit, the belief of profit, the beliefs of profit, the belief of profit, the thought of profit, the thoughts of profit, the thought of profit, the word of profit, the words of profit, the word of profit, the action of profit, the actions of profit, the action of profit, the reaction of profit, the reactions of profit, the reaction of profit, the feeling of profit, the feelings of profit, the feeling of profit, the situation of profit, the situations of profit, the situation of profit, the circumstance of profit, the circumstances of profit, the circumstance of profit, the environment of profit, the environments of profit, the environment of profit, the relationship of profit, the relationships of profit, the relationship of profit, the number of profit, the numbers of profit, the number of profit, the formula of profit, the formulas of profit, the formula of profit, the equation of profit, the equations of profit, the equation of profit, the theory of profit, the theories of profit, the theory of profit, the symbol of profit, the symbols of profit, the symbol of profit, the color of profit, the colors of profit, the color of profit, the thing of profit, the things of profit, the thing of profit, the way of profit, the ways of profit, the way of profit, the place of profit, the places of profit, the place of profit, the time of profit, the times of profit, the time of profit, the event of profit, the events of profit, the event of profit, the result of profit, the results of profit, the result of prophet, the crown of prophet, the crowns of prophet, the crown of prophet, the throne of prophet, the thrones of prophet, the throne of prophet, the prophet king, the prophet kings, the prophet kingdom, the prophet kingdoms, the prophet king subject, the prophet king subjects, the prophet king's dominion, the prophet king's dominions, the kingdom of prophet, the kingdoms of prophet, the kingdom of prophet, the prophet queen, the prophet queens, the prophet queendom, the prophet queendoms, the prophet queen subject, the prophet queen subjects, the prophet queen's dominion, the prophet queen's dominions, the queendom of prophet, the queendoms of prophet, the queendom of prophet, the prophet prince, the prophet princes, the prophet princedom, the prophet princedoms, the prophet prince's subject, the prophet prince's subjects, the prophet prince's dominion, the prophet prince's dominions, the princedom of prophet, the princedoms of prophet, the princedom of prophet, the prophet princess, the prophet princesses, the prophet princessdom, the prophet princessdoms, the prophet princess's subject, the prophet princess's subjects, the prophet princess's dominion, the prophet princess's dominions, the princessdom of prophet, the princessdoms of prophet, the princessdom of prophet, the lord of prophet, the lords of prophet, the lord of prophet, the lordess of prophet, the lordesses of prophet, the lordess of prophet, the priest of prophet, the priests of prophet, the priest of prophet, the priestess of prophet, the priestesses of prophet, the priestess of prophet, the ritual of prophet, the rituals of prophet, the ritual of prophet, the shrine of prophet, the shrines of prophet, the shrine of prophet, the temple of prophet, the temples of prophet, the temple of prophet, the leader of prophet, the leaders of prophet, the leader of prophet, the follower of prophet, the followers of prophet, the follower of prophet, the natural substance of prophet, the natural substances of prophet, the natural substance of prophet, the supernatural substance of prophet, the supernatural substances of prophet, the supernatural substance of prophet, the temporal substance of prophet, the temporal substances of prophet, the temporal substance of prophet, the spiritual substance of prophet, the spiritual substances of prophet, the spiritual substance of prophet, the natural form of prophet, the natural forms of prophet, the natural form of prophet, the supernatural form of prophet, the supernatural forms of prophet, the supernatural form of prophet, the temporal form of prophet, the temporal forms of prophet, the temporal form of prophet, the spiritual form of prophet, the spiritual forms of prophet, the spiritual form of prophet, the age of prophet, the ages of prophet, the age of prophet, the era of prophet, the eras of prophet, the era of prophet, the awakener of prophet, the awakeners of prophet, the awakener of prophet, the awakening of prophet, the awakenings of prophet, the awakening of prophet, the realm of prophet, the realms of prophet, the realm of prophet, the dimension of prophet, the dimensions of prophet, the dimension of prophet, the zone of prophet, the zones of prophet, the zone of prophet, the frequency of prophet, the frequencies of prophet, the frequency of prophet, the century of prophet, the centuries of prophet, the century of prophet, the millennium of prophet, the millenniums of prophet, the millennium of prophet, the purpose of prophet, the purposes of prophet, the purpose of prophet, the meaning of prophet, the meanings of prophet, the meaning of prophet, the culture of prophet, the cultures of prophet, the culture of prophet, the demonstrator of prophet, the demonstrators of prophet, the demonstrator of prophet, the demonstration of prophet, the demonstrations of prophet, the demonstration of prophet, the manifester of prophet, the manifestors of profit, the manifester of profit, the manifestation of profit, the manifestations of profit, the manifestation of profit, the presence of profit, the presences of profit, the presence of profit, the glow of profit, the glows of profit, the glow of profit, the goal of profit, the goals of profit, the goal of profit, the plan of profit, the plans of profit, the plan of profit, the book of profit, the books of profit, the book of profit, the philosopher of profit, the philosophers of profit, the philosopher of profit, the philosophy of profit, the philosophies of profit, the philosophy of profit, the releaser of profit, the releasers of profit, the releaser of profit, the release of profit, the releases of profit, the release of profit, the variable of profit, the variables of profit, the variable of profit, the cause of profit, the causes of profit, the cause of profit, the effect of profit, the effects of profit, the effect of profit, the journey of profit, the journeys of profit, the journey of profit, the emergence of profit, the emergences of profit, the emergence of profit, the source of profit, the sources of profit, the source of profit, the originator of profit, the originators of profit, the originator of profit, the origin of profit, the origins of profit, the origin of profit, the forefather of profit, the forefathers of profit, the forefather of profit, the foremother of profit, the foremothers of profit, the foremother of profit, the ancestor of profit, the ancestors of profit, the ancestor of profit, the descendant of profit, the descendants of profit, the descendant of profit, the lineage of profit, the lineages of profit, the lineage of profit, the heritage of profit, the heritages of profit, the heritage of profit, the heir of profit, the heirs of profit, the heir of profit, the co-heir of profit, the co-heirs of profit, the co-heir of profit, the joint heir of profit, the joint heirs of profit, the joint heir of profit, the dynasty of profit, the dynasties of profit, the dynasty of profit, the force of profit, the forces of profit, the force of profit, the law of profit, the laws of profit, the law of profit, the pact of profit, the pacts of profit, the pact of profit, the game of profit, the games of profit, the game of profit, the mask of profit, the masks of profit, the mask of profit, the armor of profit, the armors of profit, the armor of profit, the sword of profit, the swords of profit, the sword of profit, the shield of profit, the shields of profit, the shield of profit, the force shield of profit, the force shields of profit, the force shield of profit, the armored force shield of profit, the armored force shields of profit, the armored force shield of profit, the champion of profit, the champions of profit, the champion of profit, the guardian of profit, the guardians of profit, the guardian of profit, the defender of profit, the defenders of profit, the defender of profit, the protector of profit, the protectors of profit, the protector of profit, the chant of profit, the chants of profit, the chant of profit, the shape of profit, the shapes of profit, the shape of profit, the cube of profit, the cubes of profit, the cube of profit, the cuboid of profit, the cuboids of profit, the cuboid of profit, the sphere of profit, the spheres of profit, the sphere of profit, the spheroid of profit, the spheroids of profit, the spheroid of profit, the prism of profit, the prisms of profit, the prism of profit, the pyramid of profit, the pyramids of profit, the pyramid of profit, the cylinder of profit, the cylinders of profit, the cylinder of profit, the cone of profit, the cones of profit, the cone of profit, the triangle of profit, the triangles of profit, the triangle of profit, the circle of profit, the circles of profit, the circle of profit, the semicircle of profit, the semicircles of profit, the semicircle of profit, the square of profit, the squares of profit, the square of profit, the rectangle of profit, the rectangles of profit, the rectangle of profit, the parallelogram of profit, the parallelograms of profit, the parallelogram of profit, the rhombus of profit, the rhombuses of profit, the rhombus of profit, the trapezoid of profit, the trapezoids of profit, the trapezoid of profit, the polygon of profit, the polygons of profit, the polygon of profit, the pentagon of profit, the pentagons of profit, the pentagon of profit, the hexagon of profit, the hexagons of profit, the hexagon of profit, the septagon of profit, the septagons of profit, the septagon of profit, the octagon of profit, the octagons of profit, the octagon of profit, the nonagon of profit, the nonagons of profit, the nonagon of profit, the decagon of profit, the decagons of profit, the decagon of profit, the evolution of profit, the evolutions of profit, the evolution of profit, the revolution of profit, the revolutions of profit, the revolution of profit, the elemental art of profit, the elemental arts of profit, the elemental art of profit, the elemental science of profit, the elemental sciences of profit, the elemental science of profit, the elemental principle of profit, the elemental principles of profit, the elemental principle of profit, the elemental technology of profit, the elemental technologies of profit, the elemental technology of profit, the low elemental art of profit, the low elemental arts of profit, the low elemental art of profit, the low elemental science of profit, the low elemental sciences of profit, the low elemental science of profit, the low elemental principle of profit, the low elemental principles of profit, the low elemental principle of profit, the low elemental technology of profit, the low elemental technologies of profit, the low elemental technology of profit, the high elemental art of profit, the high elemental arts of profit, the high elemental art of profit, the high elemental science of profit, the high elemental sciences of profit, the high elemental science of profit, the high elemental principle of profit, the high elemental principles of profit, the high elemental principle of profit, the high elemental technology of profit, the high elemental technologies of profit, the high elemental technology of profit, the agent of profit, the agents of profit, the agent of profit, the agency of profit, the agencies of profit, the agency of profit, the amplifier of profit, the amplifiers of profit, the amplifier of profit, the amplification of profit, the amplifications of profit, the amplification of profit, the enhancer of profit, the enhancers of profit, the enhancer of profit, the enhancement of profit, the enhancements of profit, the enhancement of profit, the magnifier of profit, the magnifiers of profit, the magnifier of profit, the magnification of profit, the magnifications of profit, the magnification of profit, the influencer of profit, the influencers of profit, the influencer of profit, the influence of profit, the influences of profit, the influence of profit, the emanator of profit, the emanators of profit, the emanator of profit, the emanation of profit, the emanations of profit, the emanation of profit, the converger of profit, the convergers of profit, the converger of profit, the convergence of profit, the convergences of profit, the convergence of profit, the aura of profit, the auras of profit, the aura of profit, the impression of profit, the impressions of profit, the impression of profit, the intelligence of profit, the intelligences of profit, the intelligence of profit, the sophistication of profit, the sophistications of profit, the sophistication of profit, the genius of profit, the geniuses of profit, the genius of profit, the polymath of profit, the polymaths of profit, the polymath of profit, the psychic of profit, the psychics of profit, the psychic of profit, the knowledge of profit, the knowledges of profit, the knowledge of profit, the understanding of profit, the understandings of profit, the understanding of profit, the wisdom of profit, the wisdoms of profit, the wisdom of profit, the secret of profit, the secrets of profit, the secret of profit, the mystery of profit, the mysteries of profit, the mystery of profit, the revelation of profit, the revelations of profit, the revelation of profit, the tactic of profit, the tactics of profit, the tactic of profit, the strategy of profit, the strategies of profit, the strategy of profit, the strength of profit, the strengths of profit, the strength of profit, the might of profit, the might of profit, the might of profit, the power of profit, the powers of profit, the power of profit, the authority of profit, the authorities of profit, the authority of profit, the dominion of profit, the dominions of profit, the dominion of profit, the rhythm of profit, the rhythms of profit, the rhythm of profit, the melody of profit, the melodies of profit, the melody of profit, the music of profit, the musics of profit, the music of profit, the lyric of profit, the lyrics of profit, the lyric of profit, the song of profit, the songs of profit, the song of profit, the dance of profit, the dances of profit, the dance of profit, the spirit of profit, the spirits of profit, the spirit of profit, the soul of profit, the souls of profit, the soul of profit, the body of profit, the bodies of profit, the body of profit, the mark of profit, the marks of profit, the mark of profit, the promise of profit, the promises of profit, the promise of profit, the visionary of profit, the visionaries of profit, the visionary of profit, the vision of profit, the visions of profit, the vision of profit, the picture of profit, the pictures of profit, the picture of profit, the sound of profit, the sounds of profit, the sound of profit, the tongue of profit, the tongues of profit, the tongue of profit, the language of profit, the languages of profit, the language of profit, the communication of profit, the communications of profit, the communication of profit, the people of profit, the peoples of profit, the people of profit, the society of profit, the societies of profit, the society of profit, the fortress of profit, the fortresses of profit, the fortress of profit, the government of profit, the governments of profit, the government of profit, the city of profit, the cities of profit, the city of profit, the nation of profit, the nations of profit, the nation of profit, the civilization of profit, the civilizations of profit, the civilization of profit, the world of profit, the worlds of profit, the world of profit,